Alright, back again. Now, since I'm making a eyeball marble today, what I need to do is make sure I have all of my materials in order. One of the things that I need that takes the most preparation is the decoration, which is a thread of twisted colors that I will make in advance, and I will use that thread to draw the design on the marble. And sometimes I put letters, other times it's just a design. I will adjust the camera in a minute. Now, what I'll be doing is I'm heating a base color and I'm heating a accent color, and I'm going to put those together and make a slug of, let's see here, the two colors together. Oh, that's not very good. Okay, let me clean that up with a little heat and pushing. And I'm going to, once the glass is hot, I'm going to twist it and pull it. See that? And this will be pulled into a thread, which I will use to decorate the marble. This one didn't come out great, so that's what I get for talking and working at the same time. I have a feeling I'm going to be doing a lot of small mistakes. You won't notice, I will, because I've made so many of these that I get picky after a while. So normally I would clean the ends of these rods so that the colors would be crisp in a line. I'm going to just go ahead and smush them together. And twist that and pull it. What can we see in the magnifying glass? Not a lot. Alright, let me get rid of this for a second. Adjust the camera slightly. Alright, so what I was doing there is making an eye marble. And I need to make sure I have all the decorations for the whole marble process going at one time. Because when you make a glass marble, you're going to do all your manipulations of the glass. It's going to be finished 100% before it goes in a annealing oven to cool at a controlled rate for several hours. Some of the things that I have prepped are, this is glass powder. It's called enamel powder. I have it in a couple of different colors. I'm going to use that for the iris of the dragon eye that I'm going to make today. And now here's some of the colors that I just made for the decoration. There you can see it in the magnifying glass. It's basically two shades of green. And I can use this like a pencil. I'll turn the flame way down and draw or write on the marble as I decorate the outside of it. The first part of the marble is going to be making my gathers of glass to get it to approximately the right size, or get the inside of the design intact before I can then start manipulating that design on the inside by rotating, twisting, poking, pushing, and pulling the outside. And then after that I will decorate the outside, and then finally I will round, sphericalize the marble. So for a monster eye marble or a dragon eye marble, the construction is very similar. What I need to do is make a hemisphere of glass, half the marble essentially. Then I'm going to build the iris sort of from the inside out. Then I'll add eyelids and decorations. So let's see what the first hemisphere looks like. It's basically going to be a big gather of the background color, which in this case is going to be black. Let's see. Making a wave at people. That's pretty cool. I'm poking my phone. All right. The first thing I'm doing when I get a gather is, you see I'm waving the rods through the flame. This is called flashing. It's bringing the temperature of the glass up more slowly than just going from 0 to 2,000 degrees, which I need the glass to get to start to move as quickly as I would like it to. Glass has a few temperature ranges called strain points where it is sensitive to being brought through those temperature ranges, strain points. And my glass in particular has one around 550 degrees and one at 900 degrees. So I have to be more gentle with the glass, bringing it through those temperature ranges. Once I have it up to working temperature, I can really just do whatever I want with it. Crank it, twist it, pinch it, poke it, rake it. So now you can see I'm starting to get a gather of glass, taking these two rods and twisting them together, just to, and pushing them into each other to get a larger and larger glob of glass. It doesn't look like a very attractive glob right now, but it will be nicer later. And as ever, when I'm talking about something and trying to make sure that you guys can see it, that is new to me, so I am not doing as well as I would like. So this is what it usually looks like for me when I'm making the gather. It's quite a bit more round. There, I'm twisting it. You can see it's sort of turtle shaped. And every time I twist it around and push it together, it gets a little bit bigger. When it gets up to the size that I want, I'm going to melt one end off, the one on my right hand side. Now you can see that is free on one side, and the other side is the gather, and I'm just going to get a little bit hotter, and I have to keep it spinning at all times, because you see if I don't spin it, it flops down. So keeping it spinning keeps it centered and controllable. And as the temperature increases, it will, through the surface tension of the glass as a liquid, pull itself into a nicer and nicer shape. The hotter it gets, and the more easily the glass moves, though, the faster I need to spin it to keep it from flopping. But as you control the temperature and the spinning, you can see the shape gets a lot nicer. So now I'm going to put this in a hemispherical marble mold. So, to make a half of a marble, approximately the size of the finished marble. It doesn't really matter much at this point. I just want the back half of the marble. I'm going to attach a handle. I'm going to use a stainless steel welding rod to the back half of this approximate marble, and then melt off that first of the two glass rods from the front of it. And now it's free and attached to the metal handle. Now that portion where you can still see the nub of the rod, look at that. I'm going to flatten that out. And I usually use a graphite pad, which I have next to me. I don't know if you could see it when I was puppeting around here, but it's essentially a flat piece of graphite like this that I will push down on to flatten the surface. This is all the initial very rough stages of the design and of the marble, so nothing needs to be too precise at this point. I'm basically bringing the mass and the rough shape to where I want it to be. So now the next half of this marble, approximate half, is going to be clear, which is going to be the other hemisphere of this, which won't be a hemisphere at first. It'll be flat, and I'll draw the iris of the dragon eye on that clear glass. So I'm going to take a larger glass rod than I started with. Like, here's the black rod that I started with, which is about 5 millimeters in diameter. This one's about 10, this clear one. This will enable me to put more clear on here more rapidly. This clear that I'm putting on for the second hemisphere, which is going to be under the iris decoration, could be anything. It doesn't really need to be clear. Clear is, since it doesn't have any pigment in it, is the cheapest of the glass. And it's the easiest to see where you're putting it. You can see through it at different temperature ranges, and you have more control. Clear glass also has a nicer surface for smoothing and picking up other glass. Glass with different opacities and different pigments for different colors has different ranges of where it wants to attach itself to other glasses, and also different ranges for how it will accept poking and prodding from someone like me. And so you have to be familiar with each color's workability. This is my first gather of clear on there. You can see it's probably only 10 to 20% of the mass of the marble itself. I always have to bring the work that I'm holding back into the flame to make sure that I keep it above 1,000 degrees so that it doesn't crack. I don't want it to go through that strain point that I was talking about earlier at 900 degrees. Alright, next I'm just going to get another gather of clear on here. Possibly 2 more. If I don't talk and show you each time, it goes a little bit faster. So I'll probably do 1 or 2 more right in a row. Well, if I do 1 in a row, then it's just 1. So I'll do 2, and then I will call that in a row. And then I will show you on the magnifying glass. You'll get to see each of the gathers as a layer on the marble. You can see the different layers I've built up. Now I need to make a surface for picking up that glass powder I showed you earlier. It's enamel powder. It's great for making a softer look on a design where you can, it's not just solid color, but it's color with texture, and you can mix the colors together to get a deeper look. And I like that softer look for living things, flower petals, something like an eye like this. So normally where I would turn that into a marble shape, I am going to make a flat spot, and from that flat spot I'm going to pick up some enamel powder. So here I've picked up some green and some brown. Once glass gets up to working temperature, the color sort of disappears. It becomes either black or varying stages of yellow, orange, or red, to sort of indicate the color. It's harder to see on a digital camera lens. If I hold it here, you can see it looks sort of red, and then it fades to black as it gets cooler. To the naked eye, for me, it still looks, I can still see the heat in it. It's not really black. But those subtle variations allow you to gauge the temperature and lets you know what kind of work you could do to the glass, how much time you have before you have to heat it again. In the flame, I can see that that enamel powder gave a pretty good coating. So now I'm going to find a bigger marble mold because I have to shape that flat spot into sort of an arc, because I want to shrink this area to pick up color just in the center. To make it look more like an actual eye, where the color is more dense in the middle or changes slightly in the middle. And here's a bigger marble mold with bigger hemispheres. I'm going to go into a slightly bigger one. And now you can see the shape where I've rounded off that flat spot, so the flat spot is smaller. And I'm going to pick up a contrasting color, in this case yellow, and melt that into the surface. Now that the iris is decorated, the next thing is going to be adding the pupil. For Dragon Eye, I'm going to make it a slitted pupil. Glass does not like to stick to enamel powder, so I'm going to be very careful. And I put a little tiny blob of ultra dense black on the enamel powder. Next I'm going to flatten it, and then I will rake out the slitted appendages of the pupil. So I flattened it. Now I'm going to rake it, or grab some glass from the center with a pick and pull it to the edge. And for you to make the glass move in that way, it has to be really hot, 2300 degrees. There. So now I've pulled out, when it cools down you get to see it a little bit better. You see the slit on the eyeball. Ah, there it is. Okay, now to make it look like an eye, I'm going to add a lens over top of that. And I want this gather clear to cover all of that enamel powder and the pupil. So I'm going to get as big a gather as I can and get it very hot. And I'm going to put it on over the iris and the pupil, and then I'm immediately going to detach it and put it in a hemispherical marble mold and push the clear down so it covers everything. So right now I'm heating the clear rod to get a gather. I'm keeping the marble itself hot in the backplane. Oh, there you can really see with the flame in the background the opaque back hemisphere, the clear junk glass that's under the iris, and the iris decoration. Alright, now I'm going to let the surface of that iris cool because I don't want it to get moved when I put this hot clear over top of it. I know I say that, and I keep putting the marble back in the flame because I can't help myself. I don't want it to crack. It's like years of conditioning. How do you not stick something in a fire? For me, it's impossible. Alright, so I've got my clear. It's very soupy and ready to go. Let this cool for just a second, and then I'm going to quickly cover that. Whoa, almost got away from me. Take that away and push it all the way around in a hemisphere. And I got it! Even while yapping, I got it. Alright, so there you can see, oh, the light changed. The iris is under, and the pupil is under a layer of clear now. Alright, so next I need to turn this into a sphere and put some eyelids over the eye. So I'm going to turn my torch up just a little bit so I can heat up the whole marble and reshape it as a sphere so that I can have a better idea of where I want to put the eyelids over top of the sphere. And that will also increase the diameter, the overall size of the marble. When I'm shaping something into a sphere, I start in a graphite hemisphere that's bigger, much bigger than the marble, and I'm pulling from the heel of the marble as I twist, and then moving the area that's pressed from the heel of the marble towards the center of the marble. I'm not really pushing down, I'm more pressing and pulling and twisting. And you can see that first pass got me a lot closer to being spherical. When you're working quickly and you're not speaking and you're going from step to step, a lot of times you can get stuff really close on the first pass. Some days it just doesn't work out. It always takes several attempts. And you just try to get a little bit closer each time. If you force it too much, you're going to push it out of shape in a different direction than you want it to. Here I'm doing my second pass through the marble mold. And it should be even more spherical now. There's the iris. Brown and green background with yellow around the pupil. The decoration threads that I pulled earlier, the green on green, will come after I put the eyelids on, which will define the shape of the eye. So let's get one or two more passes through the marble mold, and it'll be round enough to put on the eyelid glass. There we go. I think that's spherical enough to put the eyelids on. You may have noticed that initially, when I was shaping the marble in the graphite mold, I started in a larger hemisphere than the marble. When I was getting closer to spherical, I switched to a hemisphere that's smaller than the diameter of the marble. So I'm just using the rim of that graphite hemisphere to round the marble, and as I change the rotation axis, as I rotate, I'm pulling that marble into more of a spherical shape than I would if I was just rotating it on a stationary axis. Alright, now I have some black glass. I'm defining the shape of the eye. I put a slug of black glass to make one of the eyelids. Now I'll add the second one. I'm doing kind of what I did with the clear, getting that very hot, clear, large clear gather. I'm doing the same thing with this black, which is the background color. and I can touch it to where I want and then stretch it. And I've got about 1.5 seconds to do that before it starts getting too firm to be pulled, stretched, and attached all at the same moment. Now, in the back flame, you can see the eyelids are in place defining the shape of the eye, but there's clear showing through, so I need to go and fill that area of clear showing through so that the background is all black. And what I'll do is, when you're adding glass from a rod, you don't want to trap air. So the way to do that is you take the hot glass, you put it on, you push, and then you pull. And I went too slow. But you see I covered 1/4 of that clear. I didn't trap any air, and I didn't use a large volume of glass. It was basically like taking a paintbrush and filling that area with glass. Is my paint. It just leaves a lot more paint than you'd be used to with a paintbrush. So I got in there on the second half of that first slot, and it is now clear as obscured. Sometimes I can do that in one shot. This time I left kind of a large clear area, so I'll go 2. Oh, I got it. Alright, I got it all with that one. It's less glass used. See, I messed up my shape again. What am I doing? I ruined it. So, here's the eye shape. And I left it a little bit bigger than I wanted because when I press it back into a sphere, the eye shape will shrink a little bit. So let's have a couple passes through the marble molds. I don't want to mush it all in. I want it to pull in a little bit on its own. So I'm going to use the heat of my torch, the surface tension of the glass, and some light pressure and rotation in the mold to all work together rather than just getting it hot and jamming it in the mold. There's always a losing argument with the glass. Alright, so this is pretty hot. I'm just going to very lightly touch it into the mold while rotating and get it the first bit there. Let's try one more and then we'll be pretty close. It doesn't have to be exact at this point because I'm going to use that green thread that I made with the 2 colors of green, 2 shades of green, and draw, and that will actually be quite 3-dimensional at first too. So this doesn't have to be super spherical. Just spherical enough to know that my design is going to be in the neighborhood of where I'm putting it. You can see that the definition shape of the eye did shrink. If I can get a magnifying glass. There it is. It'll shrink even a little bit more when I start putting the decoration on. Making sure that the heat is even throughout the marble so it doesn't crack or drop off my metal handle. Alright, I have some extra green here from a previous marble. I'm going to just attach that to the one I just made. Oops. So I have a little bit longer reach. Set that piece aside so I don't burn myself where I joined it. It'll be hot for a minute or two. Alright, now the first decoration I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line around my eye so you can really see it. And I can see it now because I have my special eyewear on that lets me see this flame and this torch work pretty clearly. I'm following the line where the clear meets the black right now, drawing this glass on. See, I started to draw with that. One side of the eyelid. And we'll do the other side. Now, there is the dragon eye, defined by the string of 2 hues of green glass. And now I have this side and the other side to put some decorations on. And I'll use the same color. And sometimes I can write names or the event I'm going to or the year or dots or just a design I'm thinking of. So this one I'll put the year 2020. Once I've done a little decoration, I need to turn the heat of the torch back up and make sure all of the marble is at the same temperature again. Here we go. I've seen... It looks backwards because I have my camera flipped. So there's the side I didn't decorate. And there's the side. 2020. And for the other side, I think I'll just do oh, yes. I can't always read the responses or the questions I'm getting and do this at the same time. But I do not have a... It's just me, so... Well, and a puppet. But he's useless. Constant drain. He's always stinking up the bathroom. Drinking my coffee. All right. So I did decorating for a little while, and now I'm bringing the heat back into the marble so I don't have any pieces cracking off. So just a bunch of lumps right now. The dots will look cool because they're 2 colors. No, I never burned myself, ever. Someone asked if I burned myself, and I pretty often. I have like some rules about how I conduct myself working around glass. If things fall, you never try to catch anything. It's always safer to let things drop. Always know what you're picking up. And when I'm picking stuff up, often I'll pause just above it to make sure it's not a hot item. If it's questionable, like sometimes when I make these little guys, the temperature on them fades pretty quickly. But if I've been joining bigger rods together, those could be hot for several minutes, and you go to grab one that you joined two short pieces together, that can lead to a burn. I guess the worst burns come from when the marble jumps off of the handle and rolls down and maybe hits your hand, or you let something get too cool and it cracks and a piece pops off and lands on your arm. So one of the things that I always make sure that I'm doing, or that I've done as preparation for coming to the torch, is be wearing all cotton clothes, no plastic fibers or anything like that. So 100% cotton and jeans, nothing else. All right, so I finished my decorating, and now I need to gently heat the decorations so that they pull in. I'm also going to push them in just a little bit by going through the molds. If you push them, you're going to move them. So you want them to stay where they are and just pull in through surface tension, so you're not smearing your letters or your dots or your flowers or whatever else you put on the surface of the glass. Alright, so that was the first pass through to push the decorations in and have them pull in. The camera light switched for me, so you can see the decorations pretty nicely, and the decoration of the iris. But if you look at the reflections, you see a lot of ripples in the surface, so that's the thing that I want to start correcting now, as well as the spherical shape. I want to bring that closer to perfection. So shape and surface perfection is what I'm going for now. What I'll do is I'll work on the side that's not attached to this handle, the punty, and get it as close as I can. I'm working on basically the 2/3 of the marble away from the handle. Then when I've got it pretty close, I'm going to switch my handle off to the other side and get the side that's attached to this handle, which is actually still kind of on the funky side. Work on that and get that spherical and smooth. For the last couple marble molds, I'll be using cherry wood paddles that I have that have holes in them that I made specially for rounding marbles. And that is wood that I've been keeping in water for its whole life, 20 years in this case. I soak the wood for years, and then I drill holes in it, and then when I'm making marbles seriously, like for 8 hours a day, the new marble molds always get a little bit of action to help them get burned in. So here you can see I'm running the marble through this cherry wood mold, and each of those little holes that go all the way through I use for just a second or two. You can see they're quite worn and burned. This is one of my oldest ones that I have going right now. I lost my train of thought on that one, but I'm sure I'll find it again. Alright, so this part of the marble is looking very smooth and very round. So now my next attachment point is going to be, rather than a metal rod, I'm going to use a glass rod for a connection that's not going to be so invasive to the glass. You can see it's so, on this end it's not round, it's bumpy, but that metal handle served me well throughout the whole construction of this marble. It was a great attachment point. But now I want to get rid of it. Move on to a more temporary point. I've taken this clear-ish rod. This is some of my recycled glass. That's not clean enough to actually use for anything, but it goes in a big pot and I pull it out into these rods that I use for handles or junk like under an iris decoration or the middle of other marbles. So, but this one is just going to be a handle and it's just going to attach to the eye. Let go. Get it too cold. It has to be just the right amount of heat. The marble has to be the right temperature. This has to be the right temperature. And to get the temperature just right, you have to overshoot. So they have to be hotter than what you want. And then as they cool and approach the exact right temperature, you touch them together. Now I can detach this metal handle. And my end there is a little bit messy looking. So I want to pull it and twist it and cut it off, just to make it look nicer. And I have a special pair of scissors that I've done a little grinding on so that they are sharp in some areas and dull in some areas to be the most useful to me. So I've pulled out the nub on the end for a handle. Now I'm going to heat farther in so that when I pull it, I can twist it. And I'm twisting some more of the marble farther in. Now I'm going to go in a little bit to here and cut that twisted part off. I didn't do it right, so I'm going to go in with my tweezers and clean up that end. Now I put some twist on the end. Might be difficult to see. So the detail that's there comes to a point with a little bit of a twist. And then there's a little blank area, which will be good for my signature. Alright, I knocked my marble off because I was talking. I'm going to pick it back up. There we go. So I've got kind of a messy handle on it right now because it fell off onto the bench. But I did a decent job picking it back up. Now, if this was a marble that was going to be sold or anything, this marble is actually ruined now because the surface has small particles in it from the bench that are oxidizing in a torch flame, which would cause imperfections in the surface. But that doesn't matter for our demonstration. The Band-Aids from last week were just cracked skin. Too much woodworking. Not enough glass blowing. Alright. I got backtracked a little bit because I dropped the marble. But let's looking a little bit better. All right. I'm going to do one more little shape on this to get the sphericalness of the marble correct. I've gone from a large hemisphere of the graphite to just using the rim of a mold. Now I feel that it's spherical enough to do my last pass on this side and get the surface very smooth and put it through the cherry wood molds, which will cool the surface and improve the shape marginally without adding ripples to the glass. The ripples are essentially a byproduct of the graphite pulling heat out of the marble so fast that the surface cools unevenly and causes the ripples. Alright, pretty round now, spherical. Now, I'm going to do that one more time, just because marbles are supposed to be perfectly smooth spheres. And this is where that final shape and polish is really going to pay off. So for this last one, I'm letting the flame do all the polishing work for me. And then I'm just going to barely chill the surface with the cherry wood paddle. And then I'm going to attach my final puntee, which is going to be very small, my final handle, glass handle. So I have a tiny rod. It's glass. I made it into a point. This will hopefully be my last attachment point. You can, at this point, pass the marble from one handle to the other as many times as you need to get it to be a perfect sphere and smooth. This is the messy little bit because I had to get a hot rod and pick it up off the bench top, which is a skill that I've mastered over the last 20 years of messing up while I do marbles. Usually if you're just doing one or two marbles, you're always making mistakes. It's when you sit down for 5 or 6 hours and you're making marbles and you get in a groove that they're really coming out good. Just like any work. Alright. I got the messiness of that handle off. And now, a lot of times when glass attaches to each other, it leaves little oxidated, tiny scum on the surface. And so this is a time, especially on the eye, the surface of the eye, where I'd go back and make sure that it looked really nice. This one's pretty good. A lot of that debris that I was talking about that picked up from the bench, I have managed to add more oxygen to the flame, so it's burning some of those impurities off. It cools down the flame a little bit, but it does clean up the surface of the marble, and it's done a pretty good job. I think good enough so that someone in the live audience is going to get this one. As a prize. Prizes. Alright. I'm pretty happy with the amount of sphericalness this has. And I can see from the light bulbs above me how smooth the surface of the glass is. And so I use that to gauge kind of if I'm getting close to done perfecting the surface. I spoke too soon because this is not as spherical as I would like. So I'm going to run it through the graphite one more time. And then flame polish, chill it, the surface in the cherry wood molds. Then I'm going to knock it off onto a flame retardant board, which is like a space shuttle tile that I made a divot in. It'll catch the marble. I'll knock off that last 20, be able to pick up my torch and polish that little nub. And then from there, well, I'll tell you in a second. I'm over here. I usually do my cherry wood molds off to the side because since I keep them in water, they kind of make a big mess. And if I'm making marble after marble and using my paddles a lot, I don't want to be working in a big puddle because anytime a hot piece of glass hits that, it's going to crack the rod that I'm working with. So I like to keep all my moisture off to the side. Alright, so I'm going to go one more pass through these molds. Oops, I broke it. Switch my new one. Okay, so now it's essentially done. I'm going to knock it off into the fireboard, pick up my torch, polish that last piece off. Then I'm going to come back with a special tweezer that I made to pick it up and put it in the annealing oven. And I'll show you that in just a second. Alright, so the marble is in the fireproof tile. And now I'm going to heat up this tweezer until it's red hot, about 1100 degrees. I'm going to let it drop until it hits about 950. Then I can pick up that marble. You can tell by the color of the metal. And I can pick that up. I flame polished the end off of it, the last handle. And now I'm going to put it in my annealing oven for a couple hours. Be right back. So, I quenched the tweezers. This is the marble mold that just broke. Been using that one on and off for about 20 years. But I have several more that I have in the process, and this one I can still use a little bit. I'm emotionally attached to this one for some reason. All right, well, thanks all for coming, and I will review and award the marble that I just made as a prize to someone in the live audience. And I'll be back next week, and I'll have a better puppet, I hope, and maybe a better tour Oh, one thing I want to talk about briefly is shutting off the torch, because it's a propane oxygen torch. You bleed everything out of the torch and out of the lines that are going from the torch, attached with these hoses, to the tanks. So you shut off your oxygen. And then you turn that off the torch. Then you turn off your propane at the tank, and you let that burn out. And shut that off. And it's the opposite when you turn it on. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great Wednesday night and week. See you next time. Mwah.